The moment she called my name across the folding tables in the community clubhouse, I knew something was off. It was the way Karen Voss smiled, like a sorority girl who'd just discovered she could ruin someone's day and thought it made her queen of the cul-de-sac. We were 2 hours into the quarterly HOA Leadership Summit at Evergreen Pines. Half the neighbors were jet-lagged from their Florida vacations, the other half pretending not to scroll Zillow under the table while pretending to care about neighborhood harmony. And there she was, Karen Langley Voss, self-appointed president, at 45 with the emotional maturity of a half-melted ice cream cone, smirking in her pastel pink pantsuit, like she'd single-handedly invented the American dream instead of inheriting her husband's contractor connections. She tapped the plastic mic with 2 manicured nails. As we pivot into a stricter enforcement era, tighter standards, higher property values, I've got to ask, her eyes scanned the room like a hawk, then landed on me. "Hey Sarah, ever get those bonus payments sorted?" 20 heads turned. I kept my face neutral, like I was admiring the fake ficus in the corner. "Not yet," I said, calm, controlled. She raised her perfectly threaded eyebrows like I'd just handed her the gossip jackpot. "How weird," she said with that slow, condescending nod that screamed, "This is foreplay for something petty." Then she moved on, blathering about aesthetic compliance and curb appeal synergies, like any of us cared about her PowerPoint full of stock photos of perfect lawns. But I didn't hear a word after that. My ears were still ringing from the word bonuses. Not dues, not violations. Bonuses plural, as in the 5-figure sum I'd earned 5 years ago when I built Pines Link, the custom community portal that handled every fine, every vote, every violation. Notice the board now used like it was their personal cash register. I'd coded it as a favor-turned contract. They'd promised full payment plus ongoing bonuses for maintenance. They kept saying recalibration pending. I reached into my tote bag, slowly clicked the side button on my phone. The screen blinked red. Recording. I angled it just right and let it sit in my lap just in case. Oh, and if you're listening to this story right now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and smash like. It keeps channels like this telling the real HOA nightmares alive. Thanks. Karen moved on to some slide about hyper-strict flag protocols, which was just HOA speak for we're duct taping rules and hoping nobody sues. Meanwhile, I opened my laptop, logged into my private mirrored repo of Pines Link, and checked the latest sync. Still green, full authorization logs intact. Every deployment from version 2.3 onward was signed twice, once by the HOA board, once by me. They never noticed the dual signature condition I buried in the contributor agreement I wrote myself. They also never noticed Section 9B. Retained rights shall remain the intellectual property of the original contributor in perpetuity for all forked, mirrored, and modular derivative works unless explicitly waived, which I had not once. By the time Karen finished her little PowerPoint ego parade, I had 3 more downloads on my mirrored repo, all from IPs tied to neighbors who were tired of her fines. I smiled quietly while the board clapped like trained seals. When the summit broke for catered Costco cookies and lukewarm coffee, I stayed back, watched Karen high-five one of the junior board members like a kid who just learned to spell foreclosure. She didn't look at me again. She probably thought I'd already lost. She had no idea what I still owned. And she damn sure didn't see the wire tightening. Not yet. 2 days. That's all it took. I was halfway through writing up a patch note for a minor glitch in the violation notification handler. Nothing serious, just a tiny memory drip that could bottleneck a few mass fine campaigns when I got the email from the HOA secretary. "Hey Sarah, can you swing by the clubhouse for a quick check-in?" No emoji, no exclamation, just cold beige, HO, a language to check in like we were about to discuss potluck sign-up, not the axe swinging toward my neck. I minimized the terminal, stood up, and made the slow walk past the perfectly manicured lawns where neighbors pretended they didn't hear the footsteps of the condemned. No one made eye contact, not because they were cold, but because they already knew. These things have a Senate tempo. You can smell your own execution before it happens. When I step into the side office, Linda, the secretary, which is just sanitized speak for corporate guillotine operator, was waiting with a vanilla folder already laid out on the plastic table. She didn't ask me to sit, just gestured toward the paper like she was offering a wine list at a bad potluck. Sarah, this is your release agreement. We're restructuring some of the volunteer tech verticals under the new compliance model, and unfortunately your role has been identified for reduction. Identified like my contributions were a tumor. I flipped the packet open. 3 pages already signed by someone in their legal, which was just Karen's cousin, the realtor. Effective immediately. Access codes to be returned. All proprietary system remains the property of the association. There it was. That line. They bolded it like that would make it true. I looked up at Linda and smiled. Not warmly, not politely, just empty. Like all the heat had already left the room. I see. She cleared her throat. We'd appreciate if you could sign before end of day. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Crisp white, thick paper. You could feel the weight of it before it even left my hand. My counsel asked me to pass this along, I said. She blinked like I just handed her a subpoena. What is it? Clause 9b, I said calmly. Contributor retained rights. I assume legal has the version I signed. She didn't answer, just took the envelope with that weird HO, a half nod, the one they do when they realize this won't be a clean kill. I slid my access fob across the desk. Plastic against plastic. Final sound. No scene, no shouting, no tears. That's not how you win. You let them think they've erased you. While they're already writing the next violation newsletter, you're just revising the terms of surrender. Quietly, I turned and walked out past the rows of artificial succulents and sterile motivational posters taped to the wall like HOA affirmations. Enforce often. Iterate rules. Disrupt everything that isn't beige. Funny. Not one of those posters ever said, read your contributor agreements carefully. In the parking lot, I popped the trunk, dropped in my old Access tablet, and opened my personal laptop. Connection tethered. Repo mirror live. Deployment licenses still active. Within 5 minutes, I'd updated the metadata on the core modules to reflect the change in attribution status. The moment they pushed another violation campaign, it would ping my retention clause, not block it, just flag it. A tiny legal breadcrumb lighting the path to everything they forgot to double check. Let them fire me. Let them pretend it was clean. The thing about software is it remembers. And I'd spent years embedding truth where their lawyers forgot to look. They took my volunteer hours. They erased my login. But I still held the keys. The first thing I did when I got home wasn't cry, wasn't scream, wasn't call a lawyer or drink or spiral. I made tea, sat down in my little home office, the one with the creaky floorboard and the ugly beige walls I never got around to repainting. Fired up my workstation. Dual screens, mechanical keyboard, everything still exactly how I left it the night before. They decided I wasn't essential. I didn't rage. I didn't shake. I pulled up the license validation dashboard. For most HOAs, an open core model is a convenience. For me, it was insurance. Dual authorship verification wasn't some quirky add-on I coded for fun. It was the linchpin of the entire violation and billing release model they've been using to terrorize the neighborhood for the last 4 years. Because when you fork a platform from public core to proprietary HOA enforcement, it has to be verified by both original architects. And I was one of them. The association held the product key. I held the lock. I logged in with my personal signature key, the one I registered back when we migrated to modular authentication. No one ever questioned it. No one read the timestamp deployment scripts. They were just happy the fines showed up automatically. But every time a violation notice went live, my key validated it silently, automatically. I revoked the signature for the HOA distribution at 8:43 p.m. That didn't crash the system. I wasn't reckless. What it did was introduce a time bomb. The next build would pass through their little admin panel like normal until it hit the license validation handshake. And when it did, it would stall, not break, just hang waiting for my signature, and it wouldn't come. I opened the server logs, clicked through to the deployment tree. Version 2.3 onward, every production push bore, my name burned into the metadata like a signature in wet cement. Time, date, hash match, immutable, traceable, legally binding under the dual authorship clause. Not just my code, my validation, my approval. They didn't just remove a volunteer, they fired a gatekeeper. Outside, it started raining, one of those soft, pointless Ohio rains that made the road slick but didn't really do anything for the garden. I left the window open anyway, let the damp air in while I wrote the next part. I didn't tell anyone. No next-door posts, no neighborhood Facebook rants. I wasn't out for clout. I was out for correction for the record, to reflect the reality. They thought I built a system, a portal find machine. What I built was a chain of custody, a living, breathing, self-documenting ecosystem that knew who touched, what, when, and how. And most importantly, who had to bless it before it could ruin someone's Saturday. It wasn't revenge. It was rebalancing. I finished the revocation, script, double-checked the logs, ran the audit trail, everything lined up. No back doors, no sneaky overrides, just silence until they try to move without me. They'd feel it soon. Not like a punch, more like a phantom limb. Something gone, but still aching. That's the thing about software. It doesn't care about pastel pantsuits, doesn't care about board titles. It just follows the logic you give it. And mine said I was still here whether they liked it or not. I stayed quiet for 72 hours. No retaliation, no posts, no Glassdoor equivalent reviews, no late-night rants with friends over boxed wine and bad takeout. Just observation. I watched the repo traffic, checked the pings on the revoked key, watched their violation pipeline hiccup twice, then crash into license timeouts, like a forgotten coffee pot burning itself out on the back burner. One neighbor even posted a question on the community forum, something vague about delayed fine notices and checksum mismatches. It was only a matter of time, but I wasn't going to wait around for the crash. I was going to light the detour. On the fourth morning, I made coffee strong enough to clean an engine and open a clean branch. No HOA sludge, no unnecessary rules, just the architecture in its purest form. Lean optimized, elegantly documented. I called it Open Pines X. No marketing, no spin, just code. The version before the board got their fingerprints all over it. Before Karen started stuffing it with bloat to make reports look impressive, before her idiot nephew insisted on modernizing with a flashy notification layer that looked like it was written during a Red Bull hallucination. I ran through the modules like I was restoring a classic car. Stripped everything down, polished the logic, rewrote the docs line by line until it read like what it always should have been. Then I added the license, MIT-based, open, free to use, but with two conditions. Attribution must remain intact. Use is prohibited by any entity directly tied to Evergreen Pines, HOA, unless written permission is granted by the original architect. Me. I didn't hide it. I put it right there at the top of the README. Forked by original architect. Attribution mandatory. Line 7S. LS Code, authorship, and architectural lead version 2.0. It felt like leaving my signature in wet concrete. I pushed the repo live under my own handle. No corporate NDA, just truth. Within an hour, it had 4 stars, 10 forks. A pull request from some neighbor out of the cul-de-sac tweaking one of the notification handlers. They added a comment at the bottom. Finally, a clean system that actually works. Bless you, whoever you are. I didn't reply. By evening, someone on the neighborhood Facebook group posted a side-by-side benchmark between Open Pines X and the bloated mess the HOA had pushed into production. My version was cleaner, leaner, faster. One reply caught my eye. Looks like the real dev finally spoke. Not in anger, not in fire and function. The best revenge writes itself in the comments. I let the thread grow. People debated the architecture, argued over notification tools, asked questions I'd been waiting years to hear. Real questions. Not the performative garbage Karen and her cronies lobbed at me during board meetings while they checked their phones and complimented each other's fake designer bags. It wasn't viral. Not yet. But it was moving. No rage, no lawsuits, no press. Just a shortcut. A better one that didn't require anyone to go through them. And every fork, every clone, every starred repo that carried my name was one more reminder. They didn't silence me. They just freed me. It started as a trickle. A few small households, scrappy, underfined, desperate for something that wouldn't choke under pressure, began using Open Pines X. They didn't ask permission. They didn't need to. That was the beauty of it. It was clean, tested, and free. All they had to do was keep my name where it belonged. They did. One posted a GitHub issue. Can't believe this isn't the official build. Another followed with a testimonial buried in a commit note. Switched from HOA version. OpenPines X reduced our notification spam by 40%. Whoever you were, thank you. I didn't reply. Not out of arrogance, but clarity. The work spoke. It always had. It just needed the right stage. By week 2, a mid-tier neighborhood watch group announced they were migrating their backyard chat to OpenPines X quietly. No fanfare, but I noticed their group chat invite seeking residents with OpenPines X familiarity. That's when I knew it was spreading. By week 3, it had traction. I got a message request from an old neighbor I used to help Ben from the days before Karen's dead-eye puppet show started. He'd moved to the edge of the subdivision 6 months ago. His message was simple. Is this you? I didn't answer. Just sent a thumbs up. He replied with a screenshot. Their block association had added OpenPines X as a direct dependency in their private staging environment. 2 hours later, the pull request went live. Inside the logs, my name sat neatly beside each module. Ellis attribution preserved. Somewhere a little corner of the internet had started rewriting the ledger, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Then came a local podcast. I wasn't listening to it live. I don't even really follow that stuff anymore. But someone forwarded me a clip. 2 retired guys breaking down suburban tech midweek analysis. The title, OpenPines X Fork Outperforms Original HOA System Finally Credited. The host chuckled. Whoever wrote this knew exactly where the fat was and where the architecture got corrupted. It's like the code knew it had been held hostage for too long, and now it's just breathing again. The other one added, and the fact that it explicitly bans its original HOA from using it, that's not just clean code, that's poetic. I closed the clip. No smile, just a slow exhale. It wasn't about taking credit anymore. It was about correcting the record, letting the truth resurface one line, one build, one commit at a time. I tracked the adoption metrics through the public package indexes. Every download pinged a metric. Every pull request carried metadata. And every time someone used it, attribution ticked upward like quiet applause. Then quietly someone big moved. Not a press release, no loud pivot, just a change buried in the dependency tree of the biggest neighborhood alliance's open changelog. A core migration, and there was OpenPines X right at the top. I checked the diffs. They didn't alter the license. They didn't strip the author credit. They knew better. I pictured Karen reading those same logs, watching my name pop up in spaces she thought she'd walled off. Places where people used to whisper about the portal as if it were a miracle of neighborhood engineering and never asked who built it. They were asking now, not because I shouted, because I stayed standing while their version collapsed under its own vanity. Let them rebrand. Let them roll out version 4.0 with their new modular fine AI enhancement layer. The real players were quietly unplugging their pipelines and switching to mine. I didn't need a mic. I had the commits. It happened on a Tuesday, which felt fitting. Tuesdays are when people try to force things. Midweek energy, but not enough distance from the weekend to think clearly. The kind of day you try to sneak something past the system and hope no one notices. Karen tried to push a build. Not personally, of course. She wouldn't know a git command if it showed up on a post-it in her iced latte. But someone under her, probably a junior board member, pressured and is salvaging her latest pivot, reintegrated OpenPines X into their enforcement pipeline and stripped my name. They didn't fork it. They cloned it, gutted the license, block yanked line 7, removed the clause that bound the code to its author, repackaged it with their own branding, and slapped on a timestamp like that was enough to rewrite history. The thing is, this wasn't 2015. You don't get to do that quietly anymore. Every deployment handshake carried with it a signature verification, not just for version control, but for legal traceability. The system was designed to check for attribution integrity. Not because I was paranoid, because I was precise. At 2:14 p.m., the first warning went off. A board member posted in a private thread pipeline stalling. Build checksum failing on module Delta. 4 minutes later, another added, getting flagged on deployment ID 7.645, a license mismatch. Then it hit production. Their internal compliance bot they'd customized to manage rule enforcement for their insurance clients pinged every neighborhood Slack workspace. Attribution, string missing. Deployment blocked. 5 words. No drama. Just protocol doing its job. Someone tried to manually override it. I could tell by the way the system logged 3 failed authorization attempts in under 90 seconds. Then the ticket escalated. The insurance adjuster, one of their biggest, caught wind. Not because of the failure itself, but because the compliance checker on their side flagged the update as a potential license breach. The language in their contract was brutal. Any trace of copyright infringement triggered automatic internal review, the kind that involves lawyers. By 3 p.m., their insurer had called. Not a courtesy check-in. Not a friendly heads-up. A recorded call. Compliance audit triggered. Risk pool adjustment pending. That's when I got the email. Not from Karen. From their legal team. Cold, formal, and personal. Subject, clarification regarding authorship on recent modules. No apology, no admission, just a question. Would you be open to discussing a clean license agreement to ensure uninterrupted deployment continuity? I didn't reply. Instead, I watched their issue tracker overflow with panic. One board member asked if they could just roll back to the last safe commit. Another said that was OpenPines X. Everything else crashes under load. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I just sat in my office with the rain tapping the window again and thought about the moment they handed me that release letter. How sure they were how final it seemed. They thought they were erasing me. All they did was disable their own foundation. Not because I sabotaged it, not because I buried a kill switch, but because I respected the code more than they ever did. It refused to lie. The trap wasn't revenge. It wasn't emotional. It was built into the logic. And now it was just executing. The second email was less subtle. No vague subject lines, no legal ease pretending this was some abstract misunderstanding. Just re-urgent license negotiation, terms sent from the desk of their new acting general counsel, which told me 2 things. Someone had either quit or been strategically repositioned since Tuesday's implosion. The legal handoff always comes fast when the insurance company starts asking questions no one can answer without stuttering. I opened the attachment, 3 pages full of language that reeked of desperation, trying to dress itself up as due diligence. They were offering retroactive licensing for all builds post-version 2.3, full indemnity clauses, plus a mid-6-figure sum for transitional alignment, but the kicker was in bold halfway through. We propose exclusive rights to deploy, modify, and resell derivatives of the OpenPines X framework. Exclusive. They wanted to lock the door they'd once shoved me through, and now they were willing to pay for the keys. I sat back in my chair, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. Let the silence settle. Let the weight of the moment just sit there. This wasn't vindication. Not really. It was a transaction. But this time, I was the one writing the terms. I opened a blank doc, wrote exactly what needed to be said. No more, no less. 1 page, 3 bullet points. License terms: global, non-exclusive, irrevocable, and perpetual usage permitted under audit-ready attribution only. Attribution: all deployments must retain authorship declaration visibly within documentation and metadata, no concealment, no substitution. Financial consideration: one-time flat fee, no royalty, no equity, but no negotiations amount attached. I signed it S. Ellis, the woman they called disposable. I didn't pad it with fluff. I didn't offer a slide deck. I didn't write a cover note thanking them for reconnecting. I attached the PDF, titled it Final Terms S. Ellis, and sent it with a subject line that said everything I needed. Access conditional upon signature. No exclamation point, no smiley face. 5 minutes later, their VP of Finance, someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, replied directly. We'd like to proceed. Please forward payment instructions. And just like that, the leverage shifted. Not with the slam of the folding table, not with a dramatic boardroom monologue, but in one page, 3 bullet points, all binding. I became the gatekeeper they thought they discarded. They made me beg for bonuses. Now, they paid for permission. I didn't gloat. Didn't text old neighbors with an "I told you so." I just opened the logs, updated the attribution timestamp, and watched as their deployment reauthorized within 3 minutes of processing payment. They were back online, but they'd never be independent again, and I didn't have to walk through their door because now I was the door. They tried to bluff their way through it. The relicensing agreement gave them back-end access, sure, but not trust. Not the kind you need when you're trying to convince a room full of anxious homeowners that you're still cutting edge after hemorrhaging your lead architect and crawling back under a new name. They scheduled the annual compliance demo anyway. Big press push rebranded UI, a whole narrative about next-gen rule intelligence pipelines. The kind of stuff that looks good on a Clubhouse slide, but dies the moment someone runs actual code. Their flagship demo was set for a Tuesday morning with the biggest block association, one of those groups who cared more about compliance and continuity than hype. It didn't go well. Midway through the session, their rep launched into a walkthrough of the new portal. Polished slick all buzzwords and bravado. And then right in the middle of a dynamic violation, preview the screen, stuttered, hung, then crashed. A red message appeared like a bloodstain across the terminal. Authorization key revoked by original author. There was silence. One of those tight, airless silences where everyone pretends not to panic, but you can feel the room sinking. Someone off-screen whispered, "Is this part of the demo?" It wasn't. The API call had triggered a secondary validation layer they'd forgotten still ran on a per-usage token. Tokens that expired unless renewed under the full license, which they hadn't. Because they assumed the flat fee covered everything. It didn't. They wanted control. I gave them a lease. Not ownership, not autonomy, just access with very specific walls. I watched the demo in real time, streamed by someone who didn't know I was watching. The error code flashed, the rep blanched, and the client quietly said, "We'll circle back." They wouldn't. By the end of the day, 2 smaller block groups had posted side-by-side performance breakdowns. Both were using OpenPines X. Both were faster. Both credited me directly in their about pages. Homeowners noticed. I knew because one of them, an old contact who'd ghosted me after my removal, reached out with a single line. "Are you still licensing independently?" Translation, their confidence was cracking. And then came the board call. I didn't hear the whole thing, but someone leaked a snippet, a clip from the internal Zoom, shared like gossip over group chats and back channels. One voice, low and tired, muttered, "Who let her walk?" They didn't even get my pronouns right. Didn't matter. What mattered was that the board finally saw it. The scaffolding they'd leaned on wasn't some faceless tech team or trendy new admin. It was me, the woman they fired, the name they scrubbed. The author they pretended never existed. I didn't celebrate, just opened the logs, verified the token had expired cleanly. No bugs, no drama. The system had done exactly what I built it to do. Enforce attribution. I closed the laptop. Let the silence return. It was never about bringing them down. It was about making sure the next time someone asked who built the foundation, they didn't hesitate to say my name. They signed on a Thursday. No announcement, no ceremony, just a quiet DocuSign notification in my inbox. All parties have completed execution. Attached was the updated contract. For pages. The first outlined licensing rights expanded, globally irrevocable and fully auditable. The second confirmed my authorship would be embedded permanently across all future builds, visible in both public documentation and private repositories. The third covered retroactive bonus compensation adjusted for inflation and paid in a single wire transfer. The fourth, a clean clause, no contestation, no non-disparagement. They weren't buying silence. They were acknowledging truth. No stock options. No title, no ceremonial welcome back. I didn't want any of it. Titles come and go. Stocks fluctuate. Truth endures. The wire hit that afternoon. It wasn't about the number, though it was satisfying. Just enough to feel surgical, not a windfall correction. I didn't reply to the GC's closing note. We appreciate your cooperation. There was nothing cooperative about it. Cooperation implies mutual interest. This was leverage, built line by line, module by module, while they were too busy polishing violation notices to notice the foundation was alive and keeping score. I reopened the site. They'd rebuilt, now live again after weeks of downtime and marketing damage control. It looked the same on the surface, sleek, modern, glossy, but I knew where to look. I opened the dev console, popped into the metadata, and found it instantly. Build signature S. Ellis. Then I scrolled to the bottom corner of the landing page beneath the legal links and cookie disclaimers. There in quiet gray text was the sentence that changed everything. Powered by S. Ellis, original architect. Not founder, not consultant architect. That word meant something. They could hire new tech volunteers, buy new code, rebrand 10 more times. But they couldn't erase the truth now. Not from the code base, not from the logs, not from the neighbors who now demanded the name behind the system before signing anything. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I just watched the cursor blink, then closed the window. It tried to cut me out. I versioned them out quietly, permanently. They withheld 2 years of bonuses. I rewrote the ledger with my name in every single line. And somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear Karen's pastel pantsuit wrinkling as the whole neighborhood finally learned the real story. The end. The rain had stopped by the time the final wire cleared. I stood at my kitchen window, watching the neighborhood lights flicker on one by one. Perfect lawns glowing under street lamps, flags at half-mast for some forgotten holiday rule Karen had probably invented last week. Everything looked the same on the surface. But I knew better. The system was running again, fines posting, votes tallying, complaints flowing, but every single record now carried my name like a quiet signature in the corner. Neighbors started noticing. First, it was little things, a block group chat thanking the original architect for the cleaner notifications. Then it was bigger. The annual meeting minutes posted publicly for the first time in years listed my contribution right under the new compliance section. Karen tried to bury it, of course. She sent out her usual pastel-colored newsletter full of passive-aggressive reminders about lawn heights and gnome regulations, but right at the bottom, in the tiniest font they could legally get away with, was the line, "Special thanks to original architect S. Ellis for foundational system work." I laughed when I saw it. Not a big laugh, just that quiet, satisfied exhale you get when the bully finally has to say your name out loud. The kind of laugh that makes you feel like the universe finally balanced the books. I didn't answer any of the DMs that flooded in after that. Old neighbors, new allies, people who'd been fined into silence for years, all suddenly brave enough to ask what really happened. I let the code speak for me. Every violation notice, every meeting invite, every payment portal now carried the same footer, built and maintained under perpetual attribution license by S. Ellis. They could change the colors, rebrand the logo, even fire the entire board if they wanted. But they couldn't touch the truth baked into the foundation. Karen's power had always been an illusion anyway. She thrived on fear, on the little fines, on the public shaming sessions where she could play queen for an hour. But once the system stopped obeying her whims, the illusion cracked. I heard through the grapevine she tried one last power move, called an emergency board meeting to discuss alternative platforms. The vote failed spectacularly. 3 board members resigned on the spot, citing ethical concerns, which was HOA speak for "we're tired of getting sued by insurance companies." Karen stayed, of course. Queens rarely abdicate. But the sparkle was gone. Her next newsletter came 2 weeks later, thinner, fewer fines, fewer threats. And right there on page 2 in bold for once. Community portal update courtesy of original architect S. Ellis. I printed it out, pinned it above my desk next to the release letter they'd once handed me like a death sentence. 2 pieces of paper. One tried to erase me. The other had to credit me forever. Poetic justice wrapped in 12-point Times New Roman. I never went back to the clubhouse. Never attended another summit. Never needed to. The wire transfer sat in my account, a surgical correction, not a fortune, just enough to repaint those ugly beige walls and maybe finally plant that birdhouse Karen once tried to find me for. The neighborhood looked peaceful again on the surface. Perfect lawns, perfect flags, perfect compliance. But underneath the code remembered. And every time someone opened the app to pay a fine or vote on a new rule, my name was there smiling back at them. Quiet. Permanent. Unignorable. They thought they could cut me out of the story. I simply rewrote the ending. And now the whole subdivision was living in my version whether they liked it or not. The best part? I didn't have to say a word. The system said it for me every single day. And somewhere in her perfect pastel world, Karen Voss was learning the hardest a lesson of all. Never underestimate the woman who built the cage you're still trapped in. She could measure every blade of grass. She could find every flag out of place. But she could never delete the name that made the whole machine run. That's the thing about real power. It doesn't need a microphone or a pantsuit. It just needs to be baked into the code and left there forever. I closed the laptop one last time, walked outside, and took a deep breath of that damp Ohio air. The cul-de-sac was quiet. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed. A flag fluttered. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like it actually belonged to the people who lived in it, not the woman who tried to own it. I smiled to myself, turned back inside, and left the window open. The rain might come again, but this time I was ready. And the code? It was ready too. End of story.